This is a production of Cornell University.
So, I mean, an online learning, so 2020, so COVID. What are we doing this for? But so when we're talking when talking to students, you'd like to be able to see them face to face. But from an extension point of view, when I've got growers all over the state who traveling becomes an issue and we want to do something that's multiple weeks and has multiple pieces, doing it online makes a lot of sense. So we decided we would try this. And so how did it get started? And also, so I work for Cornell Integrated Pest Management Program. You will see us listed both as Cornell and New York State. We have rebranded to Cornell Integrated Pest Management. So, all right. Okay, you're happy? Okay. So this statement is not from me, but from Elise Lobdell, who is a commercial scout in New York, who was, I think, the almost only person who was scouting for ornamentals. So she scouted quite a few greenhouses around the Syracuse area. She scouted Christmas trees. She scouted various other things. There are very few commercial scouts in the state. Most of them, I think, for apples and for field crops. But her point was she wanted to retire, and there didn't seem to be anybody to take over her business. There didn't seem to be anybody that was coming along that had the kind of training needed to be a commercial scout, or frankly, even to walk into a job in a greenhouse and be a scout. And so right off the bat. So she thought that we should be doing something about training people. Now, Integrated Pest Management, back when it was New York State, quite a while ago, when it first started, they actually trained scouts. In fact, they trained Elise. But that hasn't been true for quite a long while. And so there's not really a specific scout training kind of program in the state. And really nothing aimed specifically at training scouts anywhere else that we've found. So we decided to start one. So I'll go through the people that are the we. So this is Elise Lobdell. She runs a business, or she just retired. She did finally get to retire, except we still make her teach this class. And so she ran a company called the Plant Keepers around Syracuse. John Sanderson also retired, but we still make him come back and teach this class also. So he's a professor emeritus in entomology, has worked with the greenhouse industry for years. Marjorie Daughtry is down on Long Island, and she does disease and plant pathology for the greenhouse and other ornamental industries. And then we wanted to go regional, and so we brought in Cheryl Frank Sullivan, who is also an entomologist from the University of Vermont, does a lot of work on greenhouse pests and beneficials. And then Stephanie Burnett, who is at the University of Maine and is in horticulture, but has a lot of background also, both in teaching and in different aspects of what you need to know if you're going to scout a greenhouse. She works with ornamentals and cut flowers. And then me, it's easy. And then Mary McKellar. And I did find a picture of her, but I had already sent this off. So she's been on campus for a long while and has done a variety of things. I think she actually is just retiring also from that school, but she's an online learning trainer and also manager and curriculum development person. And so she had experience, if not with Moodle, at least with platforms, which I'd never had any experience working with a teaching platform. She helps run the sessions. She gives us good ideas on what kinds of questions we should ask if we're asking questions. And she's been invaluable. And if anyone's looking for somebody like that, she is probably going to start consulting. So she's done a lot of really good work with us just to help us get where we're going. And so I can highly recommend her also. So there's a plug. So we first said, okay, well, we need money. We always need money. We need money to do these things. So we tried one source, didn't get it, but then we put in just for a short-term grant to actually create the syllabus through Northeast SARE. And we had a group of growers who are our advisory committee. We asked them what they thought people should know. They vetted all the things that we did. We put together the curriculum and how we wanted to break this out into, it is currently 7 sessions. It started at 6 and we added one because it always seems like you need more time. We could probably keep going and adding more, but at 7 we're about right, it seems like. And then we wrote a second grant to actually go and teach the program. So the grant covered spring 2023, fall 2024, and spring 2024. We did it both in spring and fall because we wanted to know if there's a better time when people are available to do this kind of training. January, February is traditional for greenhouses is traditionally the education season. You can ask Neil how many talks he's given in the last month and a half. And so that seemed obvious, but then again, we're competing with other things. Is there also a period in the fall where maybe that would work? And then we had enough, we did it again in the spring just to see. We had enough time and enough money. And then since then, it's been self-sustaining. So I put that kind of in quotation marks in that we had enough equipment left from the original grant that we've still been giving out equipment from that grant. So we haven't had to start from zero exactly. We do pay some of the instructors, certainly Elise and Mary. And then at times we've paid both Cheryl and Stephanie. We should really now start paying John since he's retired. If we start adding up more and more of that, we don't pay them very much, then maybe it wouldn't be self-sustaining. But so we charge for the certificate program. There's a certificate program and a webinar program. So it's this kind of weird hybrid thing, but that works for us. $300 for the certificate program and $25 a seminar, or $125 for all 7. So if you look at how it's organized, the certificate has, again, so you would attend all 7 sessions, and they're an hour and a half. An hour of that counts as the webinar. So there's additional training for the certificate students that the webinar people don't get. They also get a box of equipment. So I think there's more about that coming up. And they get this platform, which has forums both for questions and answers. The assignments are all online and hands-on, and that all goes into the Moodle platform. There's quizzes, there's recordings of all of the sessions, and so they get all of that. They also get, we're all on every week, so they also get sort of live-ish interaction with that group of faculty and instructors. The webinar people get that in terms of being able to ask questions at the time of the webinar, but they don't have it the rest of the week. So it's interesting to see how many questions go back and forth on, I was doing this for my homework and I found this, or I work in this greenhouse and we're seeing this. And I think that's a really important part of it that's been really useful both for us and for them. And so with the webinars, it's 1 hour. They're also recorded. If you've signed up for it, you get the recording even if you weren't there. And there's credits, DEC pesticide pesticide recertification credits that you can get if you take the webinar. You can also get them if you're in the certificate program, but it's just for that 1 hour. It's not for the hour and a half. I've learned a lot about doing pesticide recertification credits. I've done them for Michigan. I've done them for North Carolina this year. And for the Northeast, I've been doing them for a while. But so that's, if you're coming from a state other than this one, and you can help me figure out how to get recertification credits, and you give me enough lead time, we'll try and do that. So they're all different. It's really fascinating how different they are. And this is just a picture of what Moodle looks like, part of what Moodle looks like, to be able to see how everything's laid out and all the different things that we have. So Q&A, webinar materials, a quiz. We don't make them take the quizzes. They're just kind of there for self-testing. An assignment every week, and then resources, additional resources for whatever the topics are. And then each week there's a topic. So if you see under topics where it says, like for example, all over here. So the first week there was an intro, that's that first half an hour, and then there's a topic that's in the second hour. Plus there's always, and it's interesting to list them as long and short, but there's always a disease and there's always an insect topic. And the insect we also put in biocontrols because it's not, you might not scout for biocontrols, but if you're scouting and you see them, you need to know what they are. And we're also trying to get a lot of ID information in there as well. So Marjorie teaches all the plant pathology ones. John and Cheryl teach all the insect ones. And then various people will teach those other topic areas, depending. And then because we have pesticide credits, we have to have poll questions in between all the sessions in that hour and other things to make sure that we can get the credits based on New York state rules. And then in the beginning of every week for the certificate students, there's maybe 10 minutes where it's like, okay, let's go over, see if anybody has any questions, see if anybody has any problems. And then sometimes we'll have found, somebody will have put in a really good picture or something from their assignment. And so we'll bring that up and talk about that more broadly, depending on what's available. The first year, you'll see it, I think, at some point, someone sent us a selfie with their Optivisors. I have 3, which is great because now I have them to choose from. And this one's particularly insect looking. He looks like he has an antenna, but at any rate. So the equipment we send them is we send them a hand lens, we send them an Optivisor. This is an Optivisor. We send them a handheld microscope. We send them sticky cards. This year they got yellow and blue, one on each side. They're very fancy. And holders to put those up. We send them flagging tape and a bedding plant book that we reprinted that has a lot of information on ID and so forth in it. And so they get that all in advance. And then one of the things that they're supposed to do is find a greenhouse to scout in. So in order to get the certificate, and it's nothing fancy as a certificate. That's what it looks like. It's just printed on a piece of paper. And so, but we still find that people are interested in having the certificates. Not everyone, and I'll show you that too. But so in order to get the certificate, you have to attend, I think, 6 of the 7 or watch the videos. This year, we're trying to see if there was a way for us to really tell if people have watched the videos. It was so complicated in Moodle that we said, all right, we'll just do it on the honor system. I can tell, for example, that 10 people have gone to look at the ones that were posted so far, week 1 and 2. And so some people are looking at them. And that's just the one where I can tell if they've looked, that's just the certificate students, because for the others, we send them a link. Actually, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe both of them, at any rate. And then they have to do, I think, 6 of they have to post something, anything in the Q&A, and then they have to do 6 of the 7 homeworks, or 5 of the 6 homeworks. Last week, we don't have one. So it's not intended to be too onerous, but it is work that needs to be done, and they do have to go out and check. So I think it's good hands-on activities, at least to get them to do certain things that you would do if you were scouting, including going and talking to the growers, which is a totally different piece than they expect to find, I think, sometimes. That was our original Optivisor picture. So how do we get people into this? So we have to do a lot of advertising, and I've got listservs that I send it out on. There's also, Northeast has listservs that they send it out to greenhouse growers. It goes out through the social media from IPM. If we're at a conference, like the Northeast Greenhouse Conference last fall, we had advertised it there. We had a trade journal article, unfortunately, was in August. So we had people wanting to sign up in August, but the person who tried to sign up in August actually did come back and sign up in February and January, so that's okay. And so, I mean, it's sort of something that's one of the big pieces, I think, in terms of getting this to be bigger. Maybe it doesn't need to be bigger. I'll show you the numbers in a sec. But it's making sure that we're advertising it and getting the information out. So we've had a fairly consistent number of people coming. After the first time, we had more certificate students and more webinar students. It kind of goes up and down. Fall clearly was not the time to do it, we learned. We just didn't get the numbers then, and so we've stayed with spring ever since. You can see that not everyone completes the certificate. It's about 67%. We don't exactly know why. I think some people, it's asynchronous. So it's set up so that it's all recorded. You can do it asynchronously, but you miss out a lot if you're doing it asynchronously. And I think often for the people who are doing it asynchronously, they don't bother doing all the other things like the homework and so forth. But for the people who do get involved, it's really interesting to see how interactive they are and how engaged they are with us and with everyone else. And that, to me, is a strong point, is that so that we want them to feel like at the end, they have a resource that if they're scouting and they've got a question, they can ask one of us, or they can go back to the references. So the resources are available in quotation marks forever, until Moodle says you have to get rid of them or do something else with them. And so far, they haven't told me that. So that's also meant to be something that's like, okay, you've got a resource, you can go back and look. You can keep doing this. We've had greenhouse workers, of course. We've had some owners take it, greenhouse owners. We've had students, we've had undergrads and grads and MPS. We had a high school student in our first year. He was great. He was scouting the plants in the greenhouse at the school. We've had some extension people take it. We've had associated businesses. We have people from Jolly Farmer at the moment taking it. Again, both webinar and certificate. More businesses probably take the webinar than the certificate, but we've had some of each. It's mostly Northeast, people from the Northeast, but it's pretty widely distributed. This time we have 2 from Prince Edward Island. We've had other people from Canada. We have somebody from Texas. We have somebody from Michigan. We have somebody from North Carolina, somebody from Rhode Island. So the word somehow is filtering out there. We're not quite sure how always, but it seems to get there. And then just because it's a thing, and I don't understand it, but it's a thing, we added digital badges. And actually the reason we added digital badges is that one of the students who took it in the fall session created his own badge and posted it on his LinkedIn. And I just happened to follow his LinkedIn, and I'm like, well, this is a good idea. So we now have digital badges too. I don't know if anyone's taken advantage of them, but they can. Okay, so this is some of the students we have this spring, sorry. And it is interesting to see who we have. So on your left is Sean Jenkins, works at Morrisville, SUNY Morrisville. I'm like, this is great. I've never had a connection at SUNY Morrisville before. So it works both ways. The guy in the middle is John Miller, and he looks like and is an old-time farmer, but he's just starting working, and they built a brand new greenhouse at the hub, the FoodLink hub in Rochester. And so that's his baby. So he's taking the class so that he can learn more about it. And then I think the guy at the end is, I think this is the one in North Carolina. And he's not scouting up on the roof, but he's on the roof. Anyway, maybe he has additional plants on the roof. So we do ask them to find a place to scout. And we're pretty lenient in terms of where you can scout, but we found that people have been successful scouting almost anywhere. So if they're working in a greenhouse, and if there are plants there currently, and this is the earliest I think we've started. We started at the end of January, and that's pushing it a little, especially in the Northeast and some northern places, to find greenhouses that have plants in them. Some of them keep them all winter, but many of them close down and don't have any plants. So there's been a little bit of moving around. I think we have 2 people working at Allegheny State Park who are taking it this time, and they're having trouble finding a greenhouse in the area to scout. But they're scouting the plant. There's some house plants that are theirs, but are also at the state park, and so they're scouting those. And we've got people that they don't work at the greenhouse, but they'll say, can I come and use this greenhouse, and I'll scout here, and I'll give you the information that I find scouting, and that's been useful. We have one working in a retail greenhouse that she doesn't work at, but she's hit all the things that come up in a retail greenhouse, like, oh, don't put those sticky cards anywhere very obvious, because if people think they're sticky cards, then they'll think there's bugs, and if they think there's bugs, then they won't buy the plants. And so she's put things out that have moved. All those things happen. They happen when you're a real live scout, so it's good practice. We can actually help on some. I'll show you one that we've got going. Is actually found a young man who's in New York City. We've found someone we knew, a connection at the Queen's Botanic Garden. So he's now going and doing his scouting there, but now he's also one of their volunteers. So again, that's good for us in both directions and for them. And then people scout their houseplants. So this is Peckham's greenhouse in Rhode Island. One of the people that we've got almost all the pictures that I've got in are from this year, because they're doing a really nice job of taking pictures. And we ask them, like, okay, take a picture of where you're scouting, so we can see it. That's part of one of the assignments. This is a First Nations greenhouse in Prince Edward Island that they're scouting in. This is Queen's Botanic Garden, one of their greenhouses. This is a Cornell, so we have a Cornell student. I don't think it's actually on that angle, but it was an earthquake. Yep, I put this one in for Bill because it's got bulbs in it. And so this is an organic vegetable and cut flower grower from Michigan. And again, while it's called a Greenhouse Scout School, and most of the people working as instructors work with ornamentals, it's not exclusive to that. I've been surprised we haven't gotten too much. I don't know if we've had anybody from the cannabis industry yet. But we get people who are scouting different kinds of greenhouses because they're working in different kinds of greenhouses. And then that's somebody's houseplants. And we've actually found that people do a really nice job with scouting their own houseplants and are often kind of surprised at what they find, which isn't surprising. Who knows the most likely thing to find in houseplants?
Whiteflies.
We have whiteflies. What did you say?
Mealybug.
Oh, fungus gnats from overwatering. Yeah. So fungus gnats are common. I mean, you will find whitefly and mealybug because they tend to stick around for a long time. But yeah, lots of fungus gnats. Tis the season for fungus gnats. Supposed to be like, yeah, yes, yep. And so in the weekly Q&A that we just want them to post something. And so we sometimes get questions on what they're doing or what's going on in their greenhouse and lots of ID questions. And so, I mean, there's the responses. Elise is amazing. She was like, I think I'm talking too much when I answer them. We're like, no, I don't think so. I think that's kind of the point. And having her answer, it's amazing to see what a good observer she is and how important that is as a scout. And so I think, again, that interaction works really well as part of the training, sort of unofficially. We want them to comment on other people's posts, and we'll have people say, oh yeah, well, we did this. Well, yeah, we had that problem when we tried this. And then any additional pictures can go in there. So this is one. It's not very clear, but I like I suspected botrytis on the stems of some of our potted basil. So I tried the humidity trick by putting it in a bag, and I got spores. I got mycelium, but that's okay. So I'm assuming it is indeed botrytis. Well, we'll get Marjorie to weigh in. And again, it's a little tough to tell. It's in a plastic bag. But I like the fact that they were excited about the fact they tried something that was mentioned in class, and it worked. And so now it's like, okay, so now you know how to do that. You won't forget that. Let's see if I can make this one work. This is. Everybody needs a movie, right? Can you see anything happening? Do you know what that is? Neil's swimming with them. Yes, Neil.
Nematodes?
Yes, and they wanted to know if their nematodes were alive or dead. So anything that's wiggling and if it sticks straight, it's dead. If it's curved, it's alive. But so I thought that was a clever idea. Yeah. Let's see if this will move now. No.
Where were those? What plant part?
That was just the ones they purchased, and they put them in a drop of water, and then you can see them swim. And that's what we recommend to people. If you bought them, make sure that they're alive before you put them out. Yep. So they were doing what they were told. This is somebody else who's using different magnification. I'll talk about that some more too. But to say, I've got this thing, what is it? Turns out it was an unusual aphid, plum leaf curling aphid, which I don't think I've ever seen, but is potentially a greenhouse pest. And then we have hands-on homework every week. And we're not really checking to make sure, did you do it this week or not? At the end, there's always a little bit of, okay, there's some lag time. I'll give you another week or two to finish up all the stuff that you were supposed to, all the assignments you were supposed to do. It works. And again, because we have some people who haven't found a place to scout yet, it makes it take up a little bit more time. Some of the homework is kind of cumulative, like we had them map things at the beginning, and there's an assignment later. It's like, now go and map it. Now that you've been out there scouting, what else should you have put on your map to begin with? And this is an important thing to do when you come in. Of course, you're going to map what you're scouting, but you need to think about all the other things that aren't plants and aren't benches, like where do people come in? Where does air come in? How wet is it in this corner? And so that's another thing that's coming up in some of the Q&A questions of, I have this issue, and it's like, yep, we can see from looking at that that's probably a wet spot. And so then you need to think about that differently. So we've had them mapping their space, or have them trying out the sticky cards and practicing the observation. There's a small problem is because sticky cards are something you can give somebody to do with scouting. They get all hung up on their sticky cards. It's like, yes, but you can't scout for everything with a sticky card. You need to actually look at things too. Sticky cards catch flying insects and a few occasional other things, but they won't catch aphids if you don't have flying aphids. And if you have flying aphids, you have a lot of aphids. So we have them comparing the magnification methodologies and see which ones they like, because it doesn't matter which we think is the best one if they find one that works for them. And then also how to take pictures using them so that they can send them to us. But also when they're sending pictures to people to find out what things are, they need to be clear. And so to be able to figure out how you can both see things and then take pictures of them. Finding some additional information, talking to growers, finding resource people like who's your extension educator, or is there extension in your area? And then, how are you going to talk, if you're a commercial scout, how are you going to talk to the grower or the owner so that you can transmit information to them and back? So we get everything from kind of scrawled maps on pieces of paper, pictures taken, and this really fancy one, it's kind of hard to tell what it is, but that's the Queen's Botanic Garden, and he's indicating which benches he's scouting. And then, you can't really see the fact that there's writing on there, but so there's a sticky card. I love it when they figure out how to write notes on their pictures to send to us. So they've got the sticky card in there in the right place. And so again, if we get a picture of a sticky card that's way up over the foliage, we can say, great, you got a sticky card in there, but you're in the wrong place. So, and then the other one is, because we have a lot of insect stuff and not so much disease stuff, that was some geraniums that they thought had root rot. And so she's made annotations on this picture of the dead one saying, okay, it started here and then we saw it over here, and things like that. That's part of their practicing magnification, and that's probably taking a picture through a hand lens, which is a little bit of a trick, but you could do it. And then they also have the clip-on lenses also. But you can get some pretty good pictures. That moth is a little bit dead, maybe, to tell what it is. I can tell you it's a moth. This is an example. This is actually from a couple years ago, but someone sent us this nice thing with all of them put together, like, okay, with the optivisor, with the phone camera, with a hand microscope, what does it look like? What can I see differently? It's all the same insect, but it wasn't until we got to the hand microscope that we could say, well, definitely that's an aphid and it has a fungal disease. But these are some of the pictures we're getting, and they're fantastic. Again, you hear a lot about fungus gnats. It's fungus gnat season. That farm has a problem with fungus gnats, if you can find that many. But they may have put a potato. We have them test putting potatoes in the pots to see, because it attracts the fungus gnats. And they may have pulled the potato off, and that might be under, but they still have a lot of problems. And then we have a nice mealybug over there, which they thought was something else, but that's okay, because now they know it's a mealybug. Here's another one. You have to have enough. You have to need videos, you know. But again, I'm impressed when they figure out how to do stuff and send it to us. So that's a really nice video of a little fungus gnat. It's not very long. We'll play it again so you can see it. You can see its head capsule. So what's that?
The life of a fungus.
Oh, yes, indeed. This was somebody doing some research, and again, we don't tell them what to go look up, but she's working on, she's scouting geraniums. She's the one that had the root rot, and so she picked pests that have to do with geraniums. Again, a geranium budworm's probably not a greenhouse pest, but that doesn't matter. The point is, can you go out and find some information? Can you give us some sources of where you found the information and so forth? This one actually is somebody who started doing this ahead of schedule. We have them make a scouting form. This, I think they were just doing just to keep track of what they were doing. It's a very nice example of creating an Excel file that works for you for keeping notes on scouting and what you're doing and what you've seen. And so, you know, keeping track of when did you put your sticky cards out and all sorts of things like that is really useful. And record keeping is, you know, one of the mainstays of good pest management, good integrated pest management. And so the fact that they started doing it before we even asked them to is kind of impressive. But we'll have them all. We'll talk about, here are some examples of things that we found that are scouting forms. There's a scouting app. There's various things. And again, make it work for you. And this one is another one. This is a great one where they were saying, someone said, I found this, I think it's a Japanese beetle. And someone else said, I'm not an expert, but I did take this class and I have this resource. And here, you need to look at the grub's butt to know what kind you actually have, which is how you tell what kind of white grub you have. And so that was, I thought, again, you know, that interaction. And we hope that some of those interactions continue on in the future. They might not, but we hope they do. And then there's sort of a question of, does it work? And so we have heard back from previous students that they are using what they learned. Since the resources are there, we hope that they're still using them. We've gotten some quotes from previous students when we did the trade journal article. Someone else wrote and they asked for quotes. And so we found some students and they did beautiful quotes for us. But we've never done a formal evaluation for all these years that we've taught it to go and say, is this something that you would use? We do an evaluations right at the very end. Would you recommend it? And they usually say yes, and they usually say they liked it. But to go back a year or 2 years or 3 years afterwards and say, was this valuable? Did you actually use it? Do you find that you are now a better scout, or that you have, was having a certificate valuable? Did it help you get a job, get a better job, get more pay? Any of those things we'd really like to know, and we haven't done that. So, and exactly doing it, I mean, we can send out a Qualtrics survey online. That's one way of doing things. But are there other ones? There are people now who know all about testing on teaching. Is there a better way we should do that? So we're always looking for suggestions. I'm looking at you, Mariel. You don't have enough to do yet, I don't think. And so that's kind of what we've done. And it's sort of it's a nice way to get into the seminars, because it's not too mind bending. But I'm happy to answer questions. Well, I'm supposed to be paying attention to the chat here, but now there's nothing in it. So if anyone wants to ask a question in chat, or unmute themselves or ask, or, yep, Hannah.
Do you have any thoughts to share on the pros and cons of Moodle as a platform?
The only other one I've used, because I also co-teach a class for the small farms, is Teachable. And there's one that they're using in Maine that they're now using in Vermont, which is Bright something or other. However, as extension, we're only allowed to use Moodle. So that was the one option we had. It works pretty well for us. I think for what we're asking it to do, there's occasionally times when it's like, how do you get the pictures in here? But we've tried to make a bunch of pages of, this is how you get the pictures in there kind of stuff. I don't know, have you ever tried any others?
Well, the Master Gardener training courses are in Moodle, so that's been my main experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just coming from the context of, seems like there's a fair amount of support that just goes into people learning to navigate the platform, but then once they do, it seems like it.
Yeah, and we do it once a year, and so everybody forgets everything in between. But that's true of Teachable also.
Yeah.
And so Teachable seems to be changing things more often. It's not wildly different. It's not like, oh, I love this one and I hate this one. And maybe there are things we could do with Moodle or with another, so we can't use Canvas, for example. And it was interesting because apparently there are a few people, and I think the beverage industry or cider got in and did some class on some other platform, and then they're like, no, nobody else can do that. They don't allow it. So we didn't have any options.
I guess just as a follow-up question, any ways that you feel like your course has kind of tweaked Moodle to make it work as well as it can for this purpose?
I don't know that I know enough to tweak Moodle, and Mary is very helpful because she may not know the answer, but she'll go and find it. And so I do most of the stuff in Moodle. I mean, there are some people who have figured out how to put their own materials in, put their slides in and so forth, and some people who haven't. And that still seems to work because either I do it or somebody else who knows how to do it does it. And so it doesn't seem like we're running into too many roadblocks with Moodle. And I haven't had students sort of say, oh, I hate this. So, but if they don't know any different, maybe that we mostly have people who've not been on any other teaching platforms. It seems easy enough for them to learn how to use it. And we have people at a lot of different ages and a lot of different backgrounds doing this. So it seems like it works pretty well. Yep.
Year to year, is there much change in the curriculum, or is it sort of?
There's essentially updates and that's it. So it's essentially exactly the same from year to year in terms of what the topics are. We sometimes move things around depending on if certain people have places they need to be for some reason. Or it's like, okay, so that sort of that weird concept of long and short for the pest chunks, because if we don't have enough time to do two that take a long time, so we find, oh, this is a short disease, so we'll put it with a long disease. We did send things up at the beginning, largely as much as possible, like, okay, we always start with fungus gnats, because early on, that's what they'll see first, and then we do aphids, because that's likely to be the next thing they see. And so we've tried to set it out like that, so that it's timed so that as we're talking about it, they're starting to see it also. So, but pretty much it's stayed exactly the same. Yep.
A more philosophical question.
Hmm.
I don't really like the term green thumb, but some people seem to like notice patterns or observe plants and be able to like detect things easier. So like, I'm curious if it like is, from your experience, does everyone seem trainable in terms of being able to observe things and be like, oh, something's wrong with that plant? Or there's some people that have a harder time kind of catching on?
I'm sure that there are people who have harder time catching on, and I can certainly see, and the thing I always tell them when I talk about, I'll walk into a greenhouse and it's like, looks fine to me, and the grower's like, there's a plant way back there that doesn't look right, it's a little yellow. And so some of that is experience, a lot of it is experience. But I do, and then some of it is just being observant. And if observing something is, if you don't like observing things, it makes it hard. I still think everybody can learn how to do it to a certain level. I mean, and one of the things is, if you're a commercial scout, is you need to be pretty fast at it. And that's one of the big things, is you don't have a chance to say, okay, oh, look at this sticky card. Well, yeah. And then let me, knock this plant out. Okay, a commercial scout might be, five benches down the row by the time you've done that. And that again is experience. And so I don't, but we might also have the problem that if they're really not interested and they're just like, then they kind of drop out of it. And so we don't see them too much all the way through the semester.
Yeah. And you're giving them the framework to be observant and
right. So that we're trying to give them some practice in being observant. And some of it, again, as I say, somebody sends in a picture and they sent a picture and I said, you've got something that looks like caterpillars to me, the way this feeding is. And Elise is like, yeah, look over in this corner. I think there's a little green caterpillar. I hadn't noticed it. So I've got a question that says, what are your thoughts about using AI models in online teaching for scouting? I don't know enough about them. Whoever that is. Joseph, do you want to unmute yourself and talk more about them? I don't think we're using anything that qualifies as AI, but all of us teaching, pretty much all of us, are pretty old.
Yeah, thank you so much for your seminar and the great information, for presenting a great, really story about your teaching. Just curious to know about how we can use AI. As example, if you have your phone, your cell phone, then you can take maybe photo. You can identify any insect or any pathogen. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joseph. That's a really interesting point. And I know certainly for greenhouses, they're really looking at a lot of AI people are interested in having AI do all the identification. And I would love to see some examples to see how good it really is. And it takes a lot of learning. And partly because if you're just looking at sticky cards, one, that takes out some of the things that you don't see there very often. And also they tend to look like this. And so it's kind of like, humans have trouble sometimes saying that's a blah, 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 whatever it is, because it's kind of a blob. And AI, I'm sure, would learn, it's like, okay, they're not going to go based on a single one of something. So it's like, you've got a bunch of these and then some other things. But we also still have what kind of a fly is that? And we have the history here where Elise actually kept sending John Sanderson, what is this fly? I keep seeing this fly. He's like, I don't know. It's just, And he finally stopped and looked at it and said, oh man, that's a hunter fly. That's a really good beneficial insect. It's endemic. It's native to Europe. It's endemic in our greenhouses. If you don't spray much, it's a really good beneficial for catching flying insects. But until he sort of stopped and really looked at it, he didn't know it was there. He didn't know that's what it was either. So I think there's potential for some of that, and that's certainly something that greenhouse growers want in terms of having to make scouting easier. So it's a great question. Thanks, Yusuf. I don't think it's going to avoid the fact that you need a body and a brain and some eyes too. Yeah.
Branching off of Neil's question about, are some people more inherent to look for things and, has there been any talk about having an in-person session where they can kind of get that hands-on experience with this, or has it just kind of been more of a online?
We asked them originally, and I think some people would like it, but travel is the biggest thing, especially if you look at where we're pulling people from. We can't even get them all from New York to come to something here. We actually do a hands-on greenhouse, not aimed at scouting per se, but really it's mostly ID and insects and diseases quite often. And you can see we get people from sort of the center of the state, but we don't tend to get them from far away.
And the reason I say that is when I was at Mississippi State University, there was a professor there that had a greenhouse tomato short course.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
it's amazing.
So he finally retired it after 29 years, but I mean, there's people internationally coming to that thing. He grew it to it.
Yep.
So that's just what
yeah, and it's not impossible. And he was doing one crop, which is helpful. And also he'd been doing it for 29 years. And so, yeah, I mean, that certainly was, yeah. So people certainly knew that. And it's not impossible. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet. Greg, you had a question, I think.
Sure. So you mentioned early on just kind of public-private partnerships and then also expanding beyond just New York to other states for this programming. When you look into the future, what kinds of ideas are you and your colleagues thinking about for trying to continue this kind of work? You mentioned a lot of retirements and starting to get new investment of expertise in this sort of program. Like, what are you thinking down the road to keep this going?
So that's a really good point, because it hasn't been built to sort of say, okay, who's going to do this next? We started with, we have one session on weeds. And so Andy Senesak actually recorded something for us because he retired right away. And then we actually have a new person coming in from, I think she's from Maine also, to talk about weeds. And so that is something that we're going to need if it's going to continue, is to have people to do it. It's getting tougher and tougher to find that as different states, decide, okay, well, we're not going to keep somebody in ornamentals doing that topic or whatever. I mean, that's true here. We don't have anyone coming in to replace John Sanderson, for example, in entomology. So, I mean, Cheryl's probably the youngest of us, and she's in Vermont. But it's a great point that if we want it to continue on, or if somebody wants it to continue on, we're going to need to figure out how to do that. We have not gone out and said specifically to any businesses, do you want to take this over? Would Griffin be interested? I don't know. I've not asked them. That's a great point, and maybe we should do something like that. We do charge money for it, so we are bringing in money. But yeah, it is both one of the issues that we see, as you say. Yeah, you're right. Two of the people that started have already retired, and the rest of us are about the same age, except for Cheryl, and actually Stephanie's pretty young too. But it is something that you got to figure out, like, how does this keep going? Is it still valuable, and how do we keep going? And is there a different way you could do it? I mean, if it's all recorded, is that enough? I don't think so, but again, it's like the difference between, okay, if you're forced to do online teaching for college courses versus you can have them in person, it's always going to be better if you can have them in person and you can have them doing something active. But there's limitations to that as well. So thanks. That's a great question. Yep.
That's a really technical question. So I know I've been involved with like pesticide credits and all. They're really strict about you sign in at the beginning and then you have 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
And at the end of that, they take the roster away and it's
but they figured out during COVID, DEC figured out for New York, DEC figured out how to make it work for them. So yes, they have to sign in online with their pesticide. And amazing, this year they're doing better. Some years it's like, you've done this 6 weeks in a row, you should be able to remember. They have to sign in with their pesticide number. I have one student who will never figure out how to do that. So I say, okay, Richard, wave at me, because I have to prove that he's there. We have to have a poll question. We have 3 through an hour session. So in between, when we're switching talks, they have to answer a poll question. They don't have to get it right. They just have to answer it. And Zoom saves that all for me. I just did this morning from last Thursday's class. So I have to know when they came in, when they left, so they were there long enough. They have to answer the poll questions and they have to sign in and out. Once you've done it a million and 2 times, it's not that bad.
And then that works for other states.
And so the Northeast accepts New York credits, and they occasionally they'll have a few other things that they want you to do, but New York tends to be tougher than anybody else and more specific. So the New York system works for them. And then North Carolina is interesting this time. I sent in the agendas and they're like, oh, you can't have credits for those. And I said, oh, here's some more information. So she's like, okay, send it all to me at the end and we'll see what we can do. So I'm not following their rules per se, because they didn't even tell me what their rules were. But if somebody says, you have to do this and I can manage to do it, and it is sometimes like, yes, I know you're from Vermont, you never have to do this, but you do for this class because I have to follow New York rules in order to give you a certificate. So, yep. But they did at least figure out how to do that for us during COVID. Yep. Yes, sir.
How much time do you and the instructors find that you're moderating the forums every week?
It can take a fair amount of time. I just did a whole bunch of it last night because I hadn't been keeping up. The one thing that's nice in Moodle is if you subscribe to the forums, it'll pop up in your email when somebody makes a comment. It's both good and bad because sometimes there's like, I think all the ones that I just put in there are all turned up, and we've got, 2 possible forums over 7 weeks. So it's a lot, but you can see if something's happening. So for example, I just said to Marjorie, there's a bunch of plant pathology questions in there. You need to get in there and look. You must not have signed up. You must not have subscribed to these. This seems to be, the people that are in seem to be particularly enthusiastic. And so because they're enthusiastic, there's more forum posts. And that's great. I think that's great. And so again, because there's a bunch of us, and Elise she retired, so now she has all this time to answer questions on the forums. But she's really good about answering. And as I said, she was worried that she was telling them too much information. But because it's like, I don't have to answer all the questions. If I had to answer all the questions all the time, that would be overwhelming. But John Sanderson will come in, Elise comes in, Stephanie comes in, everybody comes in and answers the question. So it's not horrendous, but it is time. Yep.
Great discussion.
Thank you. That's what I like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.